Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Weather Center Nazario, our evening Tropics talk at 8 p.m. It is the first Monday of October, and we have a decent amount to talk about. I'm not going to say we have a lot to talk about, but we have a decent amount. We'll let a few more folks join into the stream. We'll say hello for a little bit. Ethan's Life, AO, Alex Baller, hyping up. No, that's Friday. We can't hype up just yet. We got to wait for Friday. Friday's like the unspoken rule. Carmen, did you guys watch this October kickoff video? I had a lot of fun shooting that. I definitely look forward to giving you guys a couple more little Easter eggs with the Myers costume on, and maybe something with Friday the 13th as well, especially if something does happen. Why are hurricanes so great at being pirates? Oh boy, here we go. Ethan, why? Arjun Bani, hello. I'll be back in about 15 minutes. Florida Man 2.0, Odell's Legacy. Let's go chat. Is it starting? Yes, we are started. Zenful, hello. Doffboy A. Ethan's Life, hi. Still waiting for that dad joke to get dropped into the chat. Super Charas, hey. Woo, let's go. Larry, hell yeah, I agree. Christina's, I made it in on time. Yes, you did. Boss Lady Mama, hello. Elite Chief Stark, hey all. Daniel Butler, good evening, guys. We are going to talk Philippe for a little bit because, unfortunately, there's some very interesting ongoings that are causing a little bit more ruckus in the Leeward Islands than we ideally would have liked to have seen. And I want to dispel, especially if we get anybody in here from the Antilles, I hope, because I had some comments drop in my most recent video that there are people from out in those areas watching. There's some folks talking about how it's moving west. It's moving westward and it's transitioning west. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. I want to let that be out in the open right now because they only have one eye. Dang it, Ethan. Because they only have one eye. Why was it so hazy today in Central Florida today? Was it the dry air? No, Isaac, actually, well, yes and no. To tell you the truth, it's actually because... Exactly. There's smoke, there's fire out there. In my neck of the woods, as a matter of fact, I went to go pick up some things outside of the house, and when I got back, you could tell that there's a bunch of smoke in the air. It's unfortunate, and what's happening is because of the post-frontal winds we've been getting out of the north and the northwest, there's just driving all the smoke through our area. It's pretty crazy. I saw over the last few days, a few folks are mentioning that there's a weak front moving through the southeast, and it's a lot weaker than what some people were anticipating. And I remember looking outside over the weekend, and I'm like, heck no, what the heck are you talking about? This is not weak by any way, shape, or form. There's no way this is a weak front. We've had post-frontal winds going on for almost 36 hours now. It's been really nice outside. Wonderful out. This morning when I went to the gym, I wanted to put on the Rocky Balboa theme song and just go for a run because it felt so good out there. No AC, nice little crisp frontal breeze. Like, it's been nice out there, and I hope it continues minus the smoke and all that. It does not look organized at all, bro. No, not at all. Not at all. Good to see you. Remind people to turn that notification bell because that helps remind when you go live. Hey, what Clayton said, please, ladies and gentlemen, as I always say, I only say it in a few of my videos. I should probably say it a little bit more. But if you haven't done so already, turn on your notification bell, especially as we wander into the very anomalous month that October looks to be. Please make sure you have your notifications turned on in case we do decide to break live and or talk a little bit more about the ongoings in the tropics or over North America for that matter. Because one thing I wanted to talk about tonight is how the GFS, dare I say it, the GFS, because the GFS has been frustrating me for the last 24 hours. The GFS has been doing some interesting things with our potential system in the Gulf, and you know what? Despite how off and on it is, I actually agree with it. To an extent, we'll talk about that. To an extent, I agree with it. Let me move my keyboard out of the way so I can talk into my mic without hunching over and whatnot. There we go. I hope that doesn't bother you guys. Let me move my camera up a little bit so you get more of my face and not so much microphone. There we go. I think that ought to work. You've been getting a lot of subscribers. It's been going up a lot. Daniel, I appreciate that a lot. Lord willing, we can hit 4,000 subscribers before the end of the month. I would definitely like to hit 4,000. And then I will tell you right now, I'm really thinking about monetizing. I'm really thinking about taking that step and monetizing. Just because I would like to do this a little more frequently. I'd like to give you guys more updates. I'd like to get on camera more often. I'd like to do a lot more just content in general, whether it be the fun thing I did on Sunday for you guys, doing live streams like this on a more recurring basis. I think it might be time to maybe start to set foot in the monetization realm and see what we can do there. I just hope I don't turn a lot of people off in the process, because it's not about the money. I just, if I want to make this a full-time thing and tend to you guys a lot more than I can right now due to time constraints, then some things got to change, Super windy in Osceola County today. Yes, it was very windy. We had winds at 20, 30 miles an hour almost all day, from the morning into the night. I think they're still blowing a little bit out there. It's been raining like crazy last week, yes, and it's going to continue to do so. We've had some on and off storms because of that frontal energy that's still lingering over the Gulf. How have you been? I've been good, Arjun Bonnie. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. I've been good. It was a pretty fast-paced weekend, unfortunately. I wish that it was a little bit longer, to tell you the truth, but you know what? We may do. Oh, boy. Here we go. Here goes Willow asking to get out of the room again. Give me 1 second. You're not coming back in. All right. Anyways, I apologize. So, let's see. We just had some tropical downpours in Miami-Dade. Are we going to see more storms in the Gulf of Mexico, not hurricanes? So, Edwin, I'm going to focus on your question really quick, because that's a good one. And that kind of goes back to what I was mentioning about the GFS earlier today and yesterday. Is the GFS was once predicting a tropical system, and now it went kind of back and forth between a low-pressure system over inland United States. And because of how fast El Nino is strengthening out there, I actually agree with either perspective. It definitely seems like we could see more along the lines of a tropical system, at least based on what other models are saying, but I don't think the GFS is entirely out to lunch in it mentioning that we could see something form over land and be more of like an El Nino type southerly low-pressure frontal system. Too warm for me, needs to be low 70s and low humidity feeling. I agree. I mean, it was a nice break though, PM. I got to give it to it. It was a nice break. It's better than what it has been, and I'll tell you the truth, my Mitsubishi Eclipse doesn't have AC, so whenever I can roll the windows down and just feel cool air and not burst into sweat, it's a good day. Philippe looks kind of exposed. He should cover up. Yeah, he's showing too much skin. No, I'm not Ethan. I'll let Ethan continue to do the dad jokes and all that. You will get to 4K. Lord willing, I hope so. I really hope so. We'll see what happens. We had News 13 and West 6 come to my neighborhood yesterday and today. Wow, really? Do you think we'll get a hurricane to form in the Gulf? I don't know if it'll be a hurricane. We'll talk about that here in a second. Let me get into this real quick before I keep mentioning chat and all that. You should monetize Zenful. I agree. Lord willing, that's on the horizon. We shall see. Let's see that 12Z Euro model, Daddy. Brad Campbell. Brad's back. Brad's living the dream. He's in here now. So let's talk Philippe real quick, because I've been seeing a bit of concerning rumors floating around, and there's a lot of fear going on in the Lesser Antilles. Now, don't get me wrong. These areas of very strong thunderstorm activity, those are definitely not to be played around with. You could tell just in the cloud top temperatures that we're getting out of this infrared imagery that those are some very potent thunderstorms. But the main reason we've seen this sudden shift to the west is not necessarily because of the center. And you know what? I'm really getting tired of tropical tidbits. This happened to me earlier in my video, too. It kept bouncing back and forth, loading and doing the buffering and all that. But if I pause the loop right there, right here, if I go right it through time, do you see what's happening here? A lot of people are misrepresenting what's happening with this storm here. Now, the center's way the heck up here. The center's just hanging out doing its own thing. I used the metaphor that you guys ever get out of the shower, especially for you ladies in the chat right now, and you go to blow dry your hair, how it's all just a kerfluffled mess, and then when you blow dry it, it goes this way. That's what's happening to all his upward vertical motion and all his thunderstorm activity. That shear is pushing it off to the right or off to the south and east of his center. And as a result, what we're seeing are more pulse-like thunderstorms near the core of the storm and on the outer fringes of it. And when I say pulse, what I mean by that is you're going to see thunderstorms blow up over that hot water. And because there's so much shear, they're going to behave like normal thunderstorms you'd see here in Florida or over the United States or any kind of garden variety thunderstorm for that matter, and they're going to collapse. And so what's unfortunately happened, which is why few of the nations out there are getting inundated by these pretty potent thunderstorms, is even though the center's up and through here, we've had very weak little outflow boundaries propagating off to the south and west. And if you go through time, you can see that there is a really good one firing thunderstorms in a due west fashion. And that's why our storms are starting to move to the west. It's not the storm itself moving west. The storm is still moving on its current course. But what we're seeing happen, and you guys who live in Florida should be very familiar with this, when you see those thunderstorms collapse and they start bubbling up in areas and kind of consolidate to a different spot, that's because they're following those downrush winds or those collapsing storms and the outflows that they produce, because it collides at the surface and it causes forced upward vertical motion. And that's when you get those crazy amounts of thunderstorms. So that's what's been happening. That's why, unfortunately, the Lesser Antilles are seeing a lot more activity than what was anticipated. You can actually see it right here. Very good indication right there. There's an outflow right in through here. You can see it firing off some very weak thunderstorms out through here, the little whiffy, puffy clouds there. And then you can already see it starting to tug on the main convective complex down over here in the southeast quadrant of the storm. And then as you go forward in time, you see it start to kick. See that? See that little boundary? It's very hard to spot. I don't know if you guys can pick it out from where you are, but there's a boundary right there. Right there. And that's what's going to cause all those thunderstorms to just surge off to the west. Because when you think about it, it wouldn't make any sense to call that the storm itself moving over, because that would be going against the actual counterclockwise flow of it, because the storm is flowing like this. So if you were to say that that was the storm moving to the west, that wouldn't make any dang sense whatsoever. So unfortunately, what's happening is that shear is actually helping to induce all these pulse-like thunderstorms, and they're going to see a lot more inundation from this bad weather than what was initially predicted. Because, I mean, you look at the satellite, and you can see that that storm is still tracking off. Lost my pen here. It's tracking off from here to here to here. Like, it's still moving its projected path. It's not deviating at all. But what's happening is all these little embedded outflow vorticity couplets, if you want to call them that, are causing the core to move this way. And it's kind of the nature of the beast. You have a very disorganized storm, but because of all the different embedded vortices and these little cold pools helping to prevent the overall storm from getting strong, it's actually moving a lot more of the precip into the Lesser Antilles, which is what I was mentioning in my video today. Like, as you get to the backside of the storm and it gets to the north, that's when it's going to get real bad, and that's what's slowly happening. A lot of those central islands are starting to get on the backside of it, and we're starting to see conditions really go downhill. And no one's highlighting these things, and it's starting to frustrate me. They're broad brushing the living daylights out of this storm and everything else for that matter, and I'm going to try not to go on a rant right now. But anyways, that's Philippe. We're almost done. I can guarantee that much. He's moving at a very slow click, but we're almost done. And thankfully, this is actually best case scenario, dare I say it. It is best case scenario because had this storm been given the opportunity to deepen down into a hurricane like National Hurricane Center was predicting, I believe 2 or 3 days ago, this would have been a lot worse. This would have been a lot worse, and we would have had catastrophic damage, life-threatening conditions, whereas right now, as long as people just simply stay indoors, like with every traditional thunderstorm out there, you're going to be fine. It's not going to be that bad. A lot of the stuff that's going to happen with this thing is going to be inside of the thunderstorm activity. I've seen a few comments on social media that even up closer to the center of the circulation of the storm, there's really not a whole lot happening. So if I have any viewers in there from the Lesser Antilles, anywhere being impacted by Tropical Storm Philippe, you have to deal with the worst of the storm for now, especially all this backside convection right in through here, coming across because of the propagation we're seeing in these weak little outflow boundaries brought on by the shear. That's why it's trying to push things into the islands, unfortunately. It's not the storm itself, thankfully, because if it was, we'd be seeing a lot more inundation, a lot more, hazards for that matter. Let's see. Do you think it will affect St. Lucia? I'm fairly certain it will, because once the center can start coming to the north here, and I mentioned this in my video today, as it continues to move off to the north, if you track this precip field with it, and you take it through time, like, yes, it's also going to lift up as well. If you could imagine, I'm drawing it, I'm extrapolating it forward. You're going to get a lot of good rainfall and some embedded gusty winds with these conditions within the southeast quadrant of the storm, excuse me. Almost started losing my train of thought. What do you call a walking stick that makes you walk faster? I don't know. There is no El Nino yet. It's trying. EastPac is not active, and there should be more rain. EastPac, do you mean EastPac is not active in the tropical realm? Because actually, it's getting ready to fire, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, because that's going to really play a role in what happens in the Gulf. That's another thing, and I promise, guys, I urge you, please. I'm not bragging. I'm not trying to, my poop don't stink. I'm the best. No, I'm just mentioning, like, there's so many moving pieces, and I wish that some of the people on YouTube and social media would step out of the tropics and go big picture, because the big things that are going to actually affect what happens in the Caribbean and what happens in the Gulf are nowhere near the Caribbean and the Gulf. It's actually way out to the east, and we'll get into that right now. Let's see. There's been an El Nino since like April. Yeah, El Nino's been slowly creeping in according to the oscillating pattern, the statistics behind it. I forget what it's called, the MEI stats. We've been slowly creeping into El Nino realm. Is it supposed to become a hurricane? I don't even think that's going to happen. I'll be very surprised. We'll talk about, I'll go over that here in a second till I have that pulled up, but it's looking very on and off as to whether or not it'll become a hurricane. If it does become a hurricane, then we can say that Bermuda and the Northeast are going to be spared. Because if it goes hurricane and it can form up, it's definitely going to retrograde off to the east a little bit sharper because of that more potent rotation out of the storm, as opposed to if it stays this big blobbish mess, it's going to get sucked due north by what's happening up there. Yeah, I think just because the islands aren't the U.S., people don't seem to care, and that's the unfortunate thing too. Like, we have a lot of people down there. There's thousands of folks down there, and they're little blips on a geographical map, and that's why I'm spending a little bit more time on here. We're already 17 minutes into the stream, and we're talking Lesser Antilles, because there are there's some ragged thunderstorms going on out there. It's almost like a double-edged sword. You have a weaker tropical storm, but very potent thunderstorms with it. Or you could have gotten a stronger tropical storm, but you won't have as widespread of these intense thunderstorms. Will Philippe impact Canada? We're going to get into that here in a second. Islands could have flash flooding. Canada should watch in case something happens. I agree. I love your rants, full of hype. The right hype, though. This is the right hype. Like, I'm trying to get other people to pay attention to what's actually going on out there. Do you chase tornadoes or just hurricanes? Amy, I want to chase tornadoes. I desperately want to chase tornadoes. I want to put myself in the path of a tornado, as wild as that may sound. But in Florida, we haven't really had too many opportunities. I tried to chase one down, I believe back in July. I was right on its tail, but of course, thanks to Florida traffic, I missed it by that much. It struck Lake Wales, Avondale Park, I think, here in Florida, somewhere just to the south of where I live. There's an F1 tornado confirmed by National Weather Service storm spotters down there, and I barely missed it because traffic wouldn't get out of the way. Good old Florida. I have livestock. Is Florida going to be okay? Cock-a-doodle-doo. Savannah. Oh, gosh. So as of right now, Florida looks good. In St. Lucia, it is raining at the moment with lightning. Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen. We're seeing pulse-like thunderstorms. They're almost not so much tropical in nature. They're almost induced by the traditional dynamics you would see with regular thunderstorms, because we don't have a concentrated center and they're all so heavily sheared. Yo, poop stinks. I agree. Trust me, especially after a heavy protein day, you don't want to smell that. Weather trackers, hello. You've been on the Gulf since day one. Yes, and I'm going to go on. Actually, I'm going to consolidate my thoughts. I'm not going to get into that just yet. What happened to the models? 0 and 60, multiple models showing impacts. 12Z, everything disappeared. In terms of which one, Ethan? The GFS? Because, yeah, GFS has been doing some weird thing. NHC does mention up to 6 inches of rain for the island nations. Yeah, unfortunately, Em and Antigua, can you comment more, please? Antigua, there's definitely going to be a lot more rainfall coming your way very soon. Very soon. As that system tracks to the northwest and you get on the backside of it, that's when you're going to start to realize the worst of the impacts, for sure. Where's my cat? She bailed out of the room. She was all hyped up and got the zoomies and then started running. I don't know why. I'll tell you about a tornado I know of. Oh, Anto, you should tell us about a tornado that you know of. Let's hear it. Twister. No rain as of yet. That's good. Yeah, no, you're still off to the south. I mean, you're still off to the north of where all that convection is, and it's being pulled to the west. Yeah, let's see. It looks like all that thunderstorm activity, once tropical tidbits can load. Man, you know what? I'm getting off of this. Let's go to a different website. I don't understand why tropical tidbits is not working for me. Let's go to cyclonic weather and see what kind of satellite image we can pull up. But while this is loading, let's go to super ensemble plots because this is getting a little more concerning. I've had a few Bermuda folks in here watching previously. I'm not too sure if you're in the chat right now, but it looks a lot more realistic that we're going to see this continue to track north, get dangerously close to Bermuda, and then almost follow in the very same footsteps as good old Lee not too long ago. I never thought I would bring Lee back up. I was so excited to see it get out of the AOR, but you know what? We're looking very reminiscent all over again. All over again. Do you think a storm can form in the Caribbean and affect Jamaica, Cayman Islands? I'm watching it, weather trackers, that's for sure. I'm definitely watching it. There's been an on and off disturbance highlighted by the Korean, the UK, the Icon, and the Euro for the last few days. The Euro especially has been very on and off with its intensity, but the Icon is very pertinent in pushing that something's going to form out of it. I talked about it earlier today in my video as well, if you'd like to reference that. Friday the 13th, Storm Charlie 2.0. If we get a Charlie 2.0 on Friday the 13th, I'm going to flip my desk because right now nothing's indicating all that craziness. Watching out of St. Kitts from the map, you're showing the heaviest of the rain and wind is yet to reach us. It's very quiet right now. We are patiently waiting on the worst of it. Yes, you're definitely waiting on the worst of it. I'll go back to the satellite, or I'll see if I can pull up a good satellite shot of it now. Here we go. This looks like it'll work a little bit better. So what's happening is, since the center is displaced so off to the northwest, what's going on is all the outflow from these storms as they collapse, you can see them pulling it. You can watch, as a matter of fact, towards the very back end of the run, or not the run, but the loop, look at how there's just a bowing out of the thunderstorms, and that's not the storm moving west. That's not the storm moving west. What's happening is all that convection is rapidly collapsing. As soon as it blossoms up, it punches back down to the surface. And as a result, you're getting all that rushing air out and away from where that updraft of the storm collapses. And that's what's pushing these cells out and away. They're little microscopic, like almost fronts inside of the storm. And you can see the center is right up over here near Barbuda, if not just about right on top. I think it's giving him a haircut, like right about here. Damn it, now this satellite's moving. Come on. Basically making landfall in Barbuda right now. What's going to end up happening is, if you track this up into the west, everybody's going to get a little taste of Philippe because of where it's tracking right now. The worst is yet to come. A lot of people are getting inundated by the storm now because of the outflow boundaries with this system pushing all that rainfall to the west. But as it continues to propagate to the north, especially if we get another round of flaring up thunderstorm activity off to the south, everyone's going to see more flood potential because of the heavier pockets of rain, and that's where your strongest winds are going to be. Let's see. Meteorologists have recently reconfigured the 5 categories of hurricane. Friday the 13th, Storm Charlie watching out of St. Kitts. What if the anticyclone ends up over the Gulf instead of Mexico? If it ends up over the Gulf, that's going to change a lot of things. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's one of the big pieces of the puzzle. Yo, I sauced you a follow on the IG. I like the Eclipse, my guy. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You should see my other Mitsubishi, my fully raced out, not the Weather Center mobile, but, you know, I'll show you guys one day. Number 5 will blow you away. I'm so disappointed in the weather forecast. Like, they don't care about the small islands. Yeah, there's only a few people pumping out information for the smaller islands. And then the problem is that there's only a few people pumping it out, and they're like kind of overdoing it at the same time too. Like, yes, there's a lot of cause for concern here, but at the same time, we're actually seeing some of the better scenario that could have panned out right now happening. Like, we were all anticipating this thing was going to strengthen, and there were a number of sources mentioning Philippe is strengthening, and honestly, we're very grateful that it has not strengthened, okay? Because if it did, it would definitely multiply how much would be happening right now over the islands. Do you think the storm could hit in your Citrus Tampa area because models are across Florida now? You're talking about the Gulf system? I believe so. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. Until I start seeing a bit more tightening of where our deterministic models want to go for, then that's going to definitely be when I can start to call a landfall and intensity. Somebody asked in one of my comments earlier, how strong do you think it'll be? And unfortunately, I'm not going to say I'm not going to start calling intensity just yet. There's levels to this, and I'm not trying to quote a song. There's really levels to this, guys. If we go from one end of the spectrum to the other, immediately you're going to bust a forecast. Just like everyone trying to nail down what was supposed to happen with Philippe, they've been adjusting their forecast every single day because they keep mentioning yada, 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 doing nowcast criteria, looking at one or two models as opposed to backdating it all the way through its lifespan. And, you know, I mean, it is what it is. It was a very dynamic situation. There was a lot of wishy-washy stuff going on with it. Folks blame the good old dance that they did. Folks will blame the Fujiwara effect. But honestly, if you study the Fujiwara and you understand what happens and you understand the principles of why they interact. Like everyone's been mentioning binary interaction. Everyone's mentioning, I even said coupling and connection. The reason that is because the atmosphere always wants to be in a state of equilibrium. And as dorky as it may sound, when you have two colliding systems like this, that's exactly what ends up happening. They end up dancing around another because both of the centers are trying to understand exactly where the lowest center of pressure is. And that's why you either have them slingshot away from each other, taking the path of least resistance because they can't contend against one another, the two very potent energy sources, or you have one wash out and the other one dominates like we saw in this case. Let's see. Anyone who says the recent reconfiguration, I missed a bunch of stuff. What's happening right now? Gonna watch the video. Yes, weather trackers, I definitely encourage you do so. What time are you thinking it will reach the British Virgin Islands? You know, given its current course and how slow it's moving, I would say by this time tomorrow, you're going to have a lot of stuff on top of you guys, especially if it continues to spread off to the west and we get more shear and outflow boundaries kicking off near where those core convective complexes are. You could see it arrive earlier, but I'm thinking anywhere in the ballpark of mid to late afternoon tomorrow, if not by this time tomorrow out in that general area. Is this new storm coming to Florida? We're going to talk about that here in a second. Ryan Hall is much better, lol. I mean, he's got a much better subscriber base, a much better setup, but I mean, we're trying our best here. There's no comparisons to be made. I'm not in the business to compare. Everybody's good at their own niche. We all have our special characteristics. Anyone who says he isn't better than Ryan Hall or David, you're delusional. He's been doing this consistently, posts literally every day and goes live when something's happening. Nazario is the best. Clayton, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ethan was telling another dad joke. I missed it. Can you move to the Gulf and the Caribbean? Yes, let's do it. That's my daily blonde moment. Don't worry, Ethan, I got it. Could you go to the Gulf and the Caribbean? Do you expect October to be active? You know what? After what I saw earlier in terms of what our upper level dynamics and our environmental conditions look like, I would lean more towards October trying to continue our activity. Now, granted, it's going to take a lot more than just the oscillating patterns, tropical energy, and moisture because there is going to be a lot more shear out there. The Gulf is under a lot of shear as we speak, and that's why, for those of you who did watch my video, I had to make sure to put a caption in there so people don't think I'm wishing bad weather, but that's why I verbatim said I'm rooting for the Caribbean right now because the Caribbean is a much more favorable environment. What's going on in the Gulf is with that trough and that front coming down, you have a lot more shear wrapping up in there, but someone brought up the anti-cyclone earlier, and that was a very valid point, and that could change things. So let's go. Could a new center reform under the heavy convection? No, Carl, that's unfortunately not how it works. I mean, you could get some very small scale spin-ups in there because of the lowering pressure and that warm air rising and cooling as it goes up. You get a little bit of spinach in that, and the shear could help induce a little bit of spinning as well. But in terms of where the center is, no, the center is going to stay right up in this general area, and it's just going to continue working its way up that way. But all right, we've hammered Philippe home. If you guys have any additional questions, please leave them in the comments section after this. I will more than happily reply to you. I make sure to reply to every single comment that gets dropped on my page, even the ones hating and talking about hype and all that. I'll respond to you guys too, very cordially, very professionally. Let's go over to, we're going to do it just like I did in my video earlier. Let's go to the East Pac. So the reason we're in the East Pacific is for two reasons. Number one, we have this guy right here, this one right there. That's the one I need everyone paying attention to. Not in the Gulf, not in the Caribbean, not in the Atlantic. This is what we're watching right there. That's what we're anticipating could try to walk its way over Mexico into the Gulf and then collide with our frontal system, and that's what could induce a little bit more spinning over the Bay of Campeche before it ejects off in that direction. That's really what we have to pay attention to. And the good thing about having it highlighted by National Hurricane Center is the fact that we can track it and we can kind of compare and contrast what our models are anticipating and what it's actually doing. Because over the last 2 days now, ever since the weekend started, we were talking so much about everything, lining up consistency, and then it all went out the window the day I decided I'm not going to make a video or do a live stream. Some models wanted to go straight in like this, others wanted to go in like this, others wanted to go in like this, others wanted to go like this, and others wanted to do that. And, we had a lot of consistency, and now we're losing that consistency, unfortunately. And I think, honestly, the reason being is we're still so far out. We've been looking at this for a long time, but the reason we have been is because it's been about 2 weeks out. And even today, it's the 2nd of October. We're still looking at something that could potentially happen in another week and a half, almost 2 weeks, about 10 to 12 days. Let's be real, Nazario's on top of his job, and that's what most people don't do as good as him. Always accurate forecasts, keep our community safe, and actually puts in work. Florida man, I appreciate you. Fist bumping you through the camera. I really appreciate that. I am and I'm not again asking for a pity party, but I'm mentally, and my eyes are fried. I should be wearing my blue light glasses right now, but my eyes are destroying me right now because I've been looking at work, I've been looking at homework, and I've been obsessing about weather data all day from the moment I woke up until now, and even now we're still talking about it. That's why I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, at this point I want to just do this full time so I don't have to spread my brain power and my physical power all over the dang place. I can just hone in on one thing. But 2 pieces of the puzzle, this bad boy right here, and then we have something that's trying to brew up out here, i.e. a lopsided, negatively tilted trough. And I'll show you that here in a second. Mesovortices, yep. Well, no, in this case, Isaac, mesovortices would more so be closer to a very organized center. You could still technically say mesovortices, but in this case, they're just going to be little embedded vortices, more so induced by the up and down motions of the atmosphere. It's not going to be because of the cyclone spinning up really intensely or anything like that. I agree too, Larry. I do like Weatherman Plus also. What a sweetheart. Yeah, Weatherman Plus is pretty solid. I've been watching him for over a year now. ASMR Hammy, yo, what's up? Good to see you in here. I saw your comment a few days ago, dude. I really appreciate that. 98 EP will not impact land. Unusual will be 99 EP could impact Mexico. Yes, exactly. Although this system here actually could try to swing in to the desert southwest and really kick off some good thunderstorm activity for the Four Corners, Arizona, New Mexico, and even parts of Texas, depending on what this trough axis does out in the Pacific. Idalia moment, somewhat. Today I was a little concerned at why the GFS and the Euro were once again bullseyeing this area for development, because I'll tell you the truth, I'm not really seeing anything in the short term that could form there, but because the ensembles are pinging on it, of course I'm going to put another microscope in that general area. You forecast watching the exact area 2 weeks ago. You are good. Yeah, boss lady, exactly. I had mentioned a few, maybe a week or two ago, that we got to watch what happens down here. And if we start seeing something form up down there, you can kind of see that everything will be set into motion. I'm glad you pointed that out. I appreciate it. Time is running out for the tropics. El Nino may start making its mark. Need rain and cooler weather when that happens. Time to track winter storms. I agree. We probably still have these temps next year. Next year is going to be up in the air because we're definitely going to need to watch what happens with El Nino. There's been a lot of official sources mentioning that El Nino could actually get even stronger than what a lot of folks were pushing throughout the hurricane season and then preliminary season through the months of March to May. Rain in Southern California, I think so. We'll have to see where this system decides to track. I'm predicting it could follow something along the lines of this with that trough axis coming in. This is the one that we have to watch. Could hook this way or could hook a little bit further to the north. Now, this is where it gets interesting because if we see this more southerly solution come to be, and I'll go ahead and erase the ink and do 2 different lines. If we see this more southerly solution kick off, that's going to be a lot more of a higher chance of tropical system development. That'll definitely be a lot more tropical in nature, 100%, easily. Now, if we see another solution to where it pushes it further to the west and then comes up like this, that's going to be more El Nino unstable wave type of business. And that, either way, that's one thing we got to be careful with. And someone I remember not, they didn't, I was going to say cussed me out. They didn't cuss me out, but somebody lit me up in my comment section one time because I was upset about how they were classifying Ophelia. They said, yo, who cares about classification? And it's like, well, I do, because you classify something as tropical versus non-tropical, and you're going to have totally night and day different impacts. And with these two lines, the pink and the yellow, two night and day very different impacts. If we get something in the Gulf moving towards Florida, we could see storm surge, we can see high-level winds, we could see a lot more inundation with flooding, we can naturally see the tornado risks go up, and it'll be in and out quick. It'll be in and out, textbook tropical system. If we have the pink system take place and we get more of a southerly El Nino type of frontal system, we're going to have wider scale impacts. There's going to be a lot more areas from Louisiana all the way eastward to Georgia, the Carolinas, that are going to get hit by bad weather, an extended period of time of higher level winds. Of course, not tropical storm intensity, but there will be enhanced wind speeds. And we're going to see tornadic activity in the shape of a tropical, not a tropical system, a frontal system interacting with the hot waters of the Gulf pushing into the state of Florida. That's been the biggest concern with the El Nino predictions all year. And I mentioned it in a video weeks ago that we could see something stir up and create severe weather havoc for us during the wintertime because of how far to the southeast systems are going to track. Let's go to models now. Let's go here. We'll take a look at the Euro. We'll go Euro just to see what the European model is thinking. I told you guys in my video I was going to do some homework and see what the other models are indicating in terms of what that trough axis is going to do. So let's take a look. All right, so we're getting started at the top of the run. This is 3 days out, and you can kind of see where that jet max is going to start to deepen down right in through here. In this general grid box that I'm drawing right there, that's where our trough is going to kind of bend down in a negative tilt and try to scoop our Pacific systems up. Let me clear the ink, and let's go this way. And then, yep, there it is. You can see the trough coming in right across the west coast of the United States, pulling in like so. There's our negatively tilted trough. We have our systems forming up down here in the East Pac. And then as you go a little further in time, so this model actually has a much weaker trough and a bit of an anticyclone over the Yucatan. So this actually calls for more zonal flow. That's probably why the Euro has yet to actually depict anything forming in our Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, that has a very weak trough axis, really badly negatively tilted over Texas and northern Mexico right there. And that's what's supposed to try to scoop our systems in. You can see one system right through there, a little blip of upper level wind energy getting pulled to the north and northeast. And then this is going to cause widespread bad weather right there, this guy. All that split jet flow, just like we saw with Ophelia, that's going to cause chaos over the Dakotas, the Central Plains, the Rocky Mountains of Montana, Wyoming, the Front Range of Colorado. That's going to be bad for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they see a lot of severe weather about middle of next week, the 11th of October. We'll definitely have to watch that for them out there. Falling behind on comments. A low-end tropical storm would be amazing for West Central Florida. Actually, I agree with that. The Hive, I actually agree with that. What are the timing of impacts for EP98, if any? If we're talking, let's go ahead and look. I haven't looked that far into what this bad boy could do. We're at a 90% chance of development. I'll have to get back to you on that. Leave a comment, please, and I can get back to you on that, because that's going to take a little bit of investigating on my part, and I don't want to hold the stream up too much. I think something big is going to happen in the Caribbean and the Gulf before the hurricane season is over with. You never know. It's not out of the realm of possibility. A lot of support for the 18Z GEFS and the Western Caribbean Bay of Campeche system. Is there really? I haven't looked just yet. Let's go look. I know it usually comes in right about now for our stream so we can look at the 18Z together. I was a little concerned with what the 12Z Euro was starting to populate. 12Z Euro was going off the chain with depicting some development out there. We'll go Gulf of Mexico and 18Z. It's still not in yet. Why is it not in yet? I'll show you guys the Euro ensembles, the EPS ensembles real quick. We'll go here, we'll go to Tropical Atlantic, and then we'll start going through time, and yeah, look at that. There's quite a few of them popping off in the Gulf now, quite a few. And then what also has me a little interested is to see why we have members starting to flare up in the Western Caribbean after our event in Florida for Friday the 13th. But you can see a number of them wanting to push it this way, push it this way. So the European model definitely thinks we could see more of a Gulf of Mexico system as opposed to a Southeast United States system. and even pushing back into the Carolinas once it gets across Florida. Of course, speculation. I mean, you guys see that we don't start seeing any kind of ensembles coming together until the 9th of October, so we still have a lot of lead time to get ahead of this. What else did I want to show you guys? Let's get back to the chat. I've been subbed to you since you had 800 subs. Seeing your subscribers rapidly intensify is glorious to see. You deserve even more. Also, if you got haters, you're doing something right. Elite Chief Stark, I'm giving you a fist bump. I appreciate that a lot. What are the timing of impacts? I got to get back to you on that. I hope we at least get a foot of snow this year in New York City. Last year was a massive bust. We'll definitely have to see. You guys have been getting a lot of rain up there, and if we continue to see storms track in that general direction, especially once that 540, that 520 line starts to come down out of Canada, you could definitely see some really good snowfall. We'll definitely keep an eye out for what conditions start to shape up and look like once we get towards the back end of fall. A lot of support for 18Z GFS in Western Caribbean. Crystal River here during Idalia was horrible, or at a hurricane in over a few decades. We were so weak right now. Even a tropical storm will cause major flooding here from Tampa to Apalachicola Bay. Soon to be 2023 Wilma. Hopefully not. Worst hurricane. A lot of support for the 18Z. I have a question. Did Philippe suck up Rena, or did it just randomly strengthen within the waters? So Rena was not actually sucked up by Philippe. Unfortunately, Rena lost the clashing of the two. And as a result, she lost a lot of integrity in her center of circulation. So what energy was not only stripped by Philippe, it was also just kind of shot out to sea, and it lost all of its organization. That's why it's just a remnant low out there. That's the result of the Fujiwara effect, unfortunately. Yo, David, Gabriel's in here. What's up, dude? Ethan's life, I'm on a roll. You are like a hurricane. You could even say I'm rocking like a... Oh, my God. Ethan, I'm going to boot you from the chat, and I'm just kidding. Why did 12Z GFS models disappear and now show no impacts to Florida? That's because if you guys haven't watched my video, I'll show you. I've been using this little comparison tool, and it's been a lot of fun. I might start using it in my videos a lot more often so you guys can see what I'm seeing. We'll go to Central America. Actually, no, we're not going to use that AOI. We're going to go North America so you guys can see. We're going to go 250 millibars, and we'll go 12Z. Hurry up. Hurry up. I need some water. All right, I don't know why it's taken forever. There we go. It's starting to populate now. All right, we're going to come up to 4 maps. And what I'm going to do here, once it decides to get its act together, I don't know why it's lagging so much. Here we go. All right, so on this left-hand side, we have our 12Z run from earlier this afternoon. And on the opposite side, I'm going to select 0 and add loop. I love this tool. We used to use a lot of different 2, 3, 4, 7 panels, 12 panels in my time in Air Force weather. And so now the area we need to fixate on is going to be all across this portion of the chart, all across the south. And it has to do with that trough axis I was telling you guys about when we were looking at the European model for the west coast of the United States. So as you go through time, look at where our anticyclones set once that trough decides to come in. So if you look at the 12Z GFS, right about here, here is where our anticyclone sits, the core of it, at 12Z. This is where our anticyclone sits at 0Z. So 2 very different pieces of the puzzle. So this is why I wish people would start looking at different slices of the atmosphere to predict what could possibly happen and watch for the trends that everyone keeps mentioning. You know, people keep talking trends. We got to watch the trends. We got to watch the trends. And it's like, guys, you do realize you have to watch more than just what a model says a storm is going to do. There's a lot more mechanisms to formation and forecasting a storm's formation than just, oh, the model showed it here and then the model didn't show it. That's not a trend. It's dorked up. No, you got to look at everything else. Why is it not showing it? So excellent question, Ethan. This is why it's not showing it, because you have your anticyclone over top of Mexico, whereas on the 0Z yesterday, we had it over top our source region. And as a result, look at what it does to our Gulf of Mexico. It keeps a lot of our wind shear to the north over the United States, and it kind of clears the way for the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. So it takes care of the shear. We already have plenty of moisture down there, so that's a favorable environment with lots of good upward vertical motion. If you look down here at the 12Z, you can see that our trough gets hung up along the Baja Peninsula coastline, and you have that anticyclone over land. So as a result, I'll use my black marker to show you here. You get all that wind shear through the Gulf tremendous amounts of wind shear across Florida, through the Gulf, and then once again, your Caribbean becomes the only favorable source region. But anything that tries to strut its business out of there is probably going to get sheared apart like Philippe is dealing with right now. So that's the big difference. That's the type of trend we want to be analyzing. We don't want to watch the models to see if it forms something or if it doesn't form something. What you really need to do is interpret why the model didn't show something. Why did it show it here and not here? Why did it take the track that it did here and not here? Why did it decide to do this as opposed to do this? And forgive me if it sounds like I'm throwing shade, but that's where you really dabble into meteorology, when you can begin to dissect the atmosphere through the multitude of parameters that are available to us with this forecast data and analysis data, and you can really kind of pull it apart and piece it back together again in your own image and come to your own conclusion as to why it's doing the things it's doing. This is my theory. I can see a huge difference between where our trough is, sucking those systems out of the East Pac. I can also see a big difference in where our favorable conditions are, because if you look at the structuring of our trough, the trough is still out over the Pacific on 12Z. The trough is now moving into Mexico at 0Z, so those storms are going to get driven into the Gulf a lot faster, whereas our 12Z solution has them staying much further over land, maybe becoming a central conus, western conus kind of issue as they get picked up by that cold pocket. But yeah, that's the big thing. That's the big thing. There's a lot of moving pieces here. Some models show a favorable environment, others don't. I can show you a couple of different model platforms. For example, the Canadian model has it forming up. The Canadian model actually has it aggressively forming up. The Korean model has it forming up. The Icon model looks like it's starting to pick it up. Icon has not made it out that far, but I mean, just extrapolating it out, we'll go here to, actually, we'll use the Gulf of Mexico AOI. We use Gulf of Mexico, we'll go back to 12Z, because 12Z goes a little further out in time, and as you get to the back end of the 12Z Icon, you can start to see that energy begin to form up over the southern Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche. And at 150 hours out, look at how you start getting a cyclonic circulation right there. And then once you get towards the very end of the run at 180 hours out, you can see a really closed-off low forming right there along the coastline of Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula. So now the question is it going to mimic the Euro model and try to push it north and into land, or is it going to try to move it off to the east-northeast like some of our other models are indicating? And I think that is also going to play a huge thing. It's going to play a big role in what that trough, what that anticyclone does, what the frontal systems do. There's so many moving pieces here. That's why when I say obsess, I genuinely obsess. Like, you'll have people talking about, oh, it's showing formation. That means it's going to happen. And then I'll be talking about what's happening over Alaska is actually going to influence what's happening down here, and I'll be able to tie it together. It's crazy. Convince it to do the hokey pokey, then it'll turn. I can't with you guys sometimes. That's hilarious. Guys, what do you do when you see a hurricane? Oh, never mind. That's the punchline. I missed the joke, or I missed the tag. I hit the punchline first, and it was still funny. 18Z GFS makes no sense. Yeah, I don't know what 18Z does. I don't know what GFS has been doing either anyways, like all in all. Oh, here's the Canadian ensembles. I have those pulled up for you guys, too, because those are looking a little more menacing as well. My Waffle House here shut down during I Diddly Doodah, and I almost pooped myself. You are breaking down the why, not just telling us what a blob on a map is. A real meteorologist. Robert, I genuinely thank you for that. And that's what it's all about. That's the name of the game. Because you have your models, and anybody can come to a model, jump on camera, and mention, did you guys see that circle? Look at how that circle moves this way. It's coming. Thank you for watching. Like, anybody can do that. At that point, why would I even be in a job? Why would we have jobs if you guys can come to these you guys can see everything I'm seeing. You could look at everything that I see and kind of make your own determinations. Where the science comes into play is folks who can dissect every sliver of the data and then communicate it to you guys. Think modification taking place. Wow, so we don't really know if Florida will be affected or not. No, Florida's going to be affected. Florida's going to get something. Right now, the big determinant is what is it going to be. the confidence in terms of seeing something form is almost through the roof at this point because we have so many mechanisms in play. We have a good frontal system coming through. We have a trough coming through. We have a lot of leftover residual moisture in the environment. We have vorticity at 500 millibars to instigate some good stuff going on. So the big question is not if, it's a matter of when and what specifically. LMAO Nazario is like the sun will affect the earth in this way and boom. Yeah, so you guys, you saw that solar flare that erupted 10 years ago. We're going to get a super hurricane in about another 3 years because of it. I'm just kidding. I diddly-doo-dah. Nazario 2023. I felt bad when I put that in a video. I don't want people to think I'm messing around with Idalia, but I know that everybody was butchering her name. Idalia, like everyone was messing it up, so I figured, you know what? I diddly-doo-dah is what I made it up for. Meteorologia, Yucatan is talking about this area in the Vaguadas Maya. I remember you mentioning that before. That's true. I need to look more into that. I was looking down over what Central American discussions were mentioning, and they've actually been seeing a lot of bad weather because of the gyre starting to take shape again. Guatemala has 21 reported deaths as of right now because of the potency of the thunderstorms they've been seeing out there. They've been getting a lot of flash flooding weather. And now that I think about it, it's a shame on my part that I didn't mention that in my video today. I really wanted to, and I even wrote it down. I wrote it down earlier during my note-taking that Guatemala is seeing. Yeah, I wrote it down earlier today in my notes when I was. So this is how much I obsess over this stuff. I have notes upon notes upon notes amongst doing other things too. Guatemala and a couple other Central American countries down there are seeing such tremendous flooding because of those gyre conditions starting to amp up, and no one's talking about that, unfortunately. There's 21 people dead in Guatemala because of landslides and flash flooding. How long until something forms in the Gulf? Ken, by the time the 9th or the 10th of October rolls in, we'll start to see something take shape. Whether it just be a massive precip along the leading edge of that front or an organized system, that's still a little bit up in the air. Development is there, and that's what I wanted to see, is if all of our models could point out that there's going to be development. That's there. That's definitely there. Now it's just a matter of what is this development going to be. There's going to be some enhanced activity out there. A lot of our ensembles and our operational models are singing something. We just got to see exactly what's going to happen once we get to that 5-7 day threshold. This just in, 2026 hurricane season to be record-breaking. That sounds like pure hype. That sounds like something hypey. Now I have a question. Should we in South Carolina observe? Yes. Definitely do so, because with the way the jet is oriented down here, anything that hits Florida is going to be moving this way. I don't know why I repeated myself right there. Anything that hits Florida is going to be moving this way. I have my own echo all of a sudden built in. Excuse me. What do you call dangerous rain? Oh, God. I thought that was a genuine question, and I saw who it was from. EPS is showing lowering pressure over Florida Penn late next week. Yes. The Euro ensembles have been showing lowering pressure for quite some time. All of our models, honestly, have been showing lowering pressures across this general area for a while now. Like, the whole area is just lit up for lower pressure. Before we get too deep in the stream, it's already 8:52. Let's go through the Canadian ensembles. These are our 12Z ensembles for the Canadian model, and take a look at this. So the Canadian is definitely seeing that formation, and I'm on board with that. National Hurricane Center's on board with it. And then you get it to wander over Central America. Some of the solutions still take it off further to the west, and I think that's because of the response between what the trough does and what our frontal system does, and that big-ass what that big old high pressure does over Texas. But you can see that there are a number of agreeing model ensembles, or I should say ensemble members, that track it into the Gulf, and some activity along the gyre even post when that development could take shape. And you can see a lot of those, like that whole swath just moves in our general direction, right in there, just all propagates off to the northeast. I'll clear the ink so you guys can see it clearly, but you go forward in time and you can see a whole lot of agreement. Look at that. Whole lot of agreement. And then there's a resurgence of something out over the Central and Eastern Caribbean later on down the road. And then you get this thing. I don't know what that is. That thing's just been wandering out there. It wanders around Cuba, floats around. Where the heck did that come from? Is that the ensembles picking up on that disturbance? You know what? That might be the ensembles picking up on the disturbance that's supposed to work its way through the Lesser Antilles. That makes sense with the track. Because if I were to push some, because there's something out and through here that the Icon Euro Canadian model, well, not the Canadian, excuse me, the UK model been highlighting, and that looks like the Canadian model wants to form something up from it and then move it off in this direction. That's interesting. And then, of course, bring it back towards Florida. The Canadian model's trying its best for us. It's trying to push something towards Florida. It really is. Should Fort Lauderdale be watching? Yes, Blake. Anybody in the state of Florida should definitely be watching right now. I'm not calling tropical. I'm not calling non-tropical. I'm not classifying it yet. But everybody in the southeast needs to be paying attention. And that's why this is where I can go on my rant, and then we're going to wrap up the stream. That is why I'm very frustrated. There are some people talking about it now. There are a couple of pages talking about the Gulf and the Caribbean. They haven't gone too in-depth with it just yet, but there are some channels starting to talk about it, and I had a feeling they would at this point. But there are also still a number of channels who want to broad brush this and have the audacity to say, there really isn't a whole lot suggesting we could see development, so until that happens, we're really not going to spend a whole lot of time fixating on it. And I'm just sitting here like, what did you just say? What did you just say? So, Philippe doesn't seem to affect us. You think the next 48 hours will be concrete on something coming? I wouldn't say 48 hours. I would honestly say as we get closer to this weekend, we'll have more concrete. Thankfully, we fulfilled the checklist requirements to see whether or not we were going to check the box of will there be development and will we see consistent development on our models up to this past weekend. We got it. So now, since we're still predicting that something could form between the 9th and the 10th, I'm projecting that maybe by the time we hit October 5th and 6th, we'll get a good concrete idea of what's going to happen. Because when we're that close, only 4 or 5 days out from a situation, that's when the models are really not going to waver as much as they are right now. We'll start to see some really good consistency in what they think is going to happen. Exactly, Robert. It always rains in Florida. It's just a matter of how much. You think Pensacola area should be okay? It's really going to depend. Like I said, it's still too early to start talking primary track or anything, because I've seen models that want to do this with this, whatever this thing is. Some want to track it straight north. Others want to track it up this way. Others want to track it up this way. Others want to track it like this. Others want to miss Florida altogether. Others want to do this. So that's why I'm mentioning we know that development is likely to take place at this point. We just have to pay close attention to what comes out of this development and where it forms up, because everybody in the southeast could be under the gun if, like the GFS had mentioned, if it becomes more of like an El Nino southeastern type storm and it just grazes across the southeast, everybody's going to get effect from it. It may not be as bad as a consolidated tropical system, but there's still going to be a lot of impacts with that as it moves through. Real quick, I see some people mentioning it. We'll go to the Korean model. Korean model has been very steadfast in its depiction with this. The Korean model has actually been one of the more, I'd say, consistent run-to-run models that I've seen. What's very interesting, though, is it wants to create a very broad area of low pressure, but you see this, there it goes, tracking straight towards the west coast of Florida, putting it right into the Tampa-St. Pete area, as a matter of fact, before it tries to almost spin up something else, which that's brand spanking new. I didn't see that the last time or the last several runs of this model, so I don't know if I trust this secondary system spinning up. I do trust that whatever does take shape here can move in this general direction, whether it be a little further to the south or a little further to the north. I'm definitely in agreement with that. This second system, I don't know about that. That's definitely very interesting, and I don't know what the model would think or would come to that conclusion we could see that happen. Why hasn't Philippe moved north yet? Unfortunately, it's just moving too slow. We don't have a lot in the pattern to really steer him along. The high pressure to the north hasn't dug in back to the south quite as much yet, and we haven't had the frontal system that came across the southeast United States come in to scoop it up and pick it on up. It's starting to move now, though, because we had frontal passage here in central Florida, so I definitely do think you're going to start seeing it move more to the north, slowly but surely. Will National Hurricane Center highlight something, and when will they do it? You know, at this point, I thought they would have highlighted something for the Caribbean. just because of what's coming up back here. As a matter of fact, if I still have my folks from the Lesser Antilles or any of the Antilles for that matter, or anybody in the Caribbean watching, we're going to wrap up the stream just like I wrapped up my video earlier today. But I'm still keeping a close eye on this little thing. Not really anticipating a tremendous amount of impacts on it. None of the models are, but you can still see a tropical wave moving right there through the Lesser Antilles, right about October 6th into the 7th. And then the icon has been very diligent in trying to develop it into a more of a organized disturbance as you get into the Central Caribbean. Right in through there. You can see it now a little more pronounced. As it was coming through here, it was more of just a aggressive-looking tropical wave. So for those of you who are getting impacted by Philippe right now, especially the southern Lesser Antilles closer to Trinidad, Tobago, he's got to spin myself up on the geography out there. But anyways, the Windward Islands, if you guys are seeing any effects from Philippe, within the next few days, you could see another little dose of shower activity because of what's going on with that tropical wave. No one is reporting what you're seeing, and I don't understand why. Everyone's focused on Philippe, and like I understand that Philippe is the imminent threat. People are getting hit by it right now. There are things happening right now, but at the grand scheme, number one, that doesn't mean we can take our eyes off everything else. For starters, that's not me being callous or being cold. It's just, like there's a huge Earth. And to focus on one thing that's happening is almost it's a disservice to everybody else out there watching. Do I care about those people out there? 175%. Do I report on that? Yes. Do I tell it like it is? Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's no reason we need to be hammering it home the way we are, because this is actually panning out a lot better than it could have. We've had so many crazy storms go through there. Nigel, we had Margot, we had Lee bomb out into a Cat 5, and had he gone further south, they would have been wiped out. Some of the earlier model runs were calling for something pushing through there really bad. Cat 2, Cat 3. So just being honest, like I'm not saying we got to stop talking about it, but we got to understand how much energy we put into this stuff. And then it baffles me to see some people focusing so much on Philippe that they're saying, I don't see anything else happening anywhere else. I'm only going to talk about Philippe. It's like, no, because you're not looking at everything. That's the reason I get so passionate about this is, I think you guys get it. I'm not going to continue. You guys get it. Jeannie here still watching from Grand Cayman Island. Welcome into the stream. Thanks for watching. We're watching for you guys out there, too. If we see anything in the Western Caribbean, it's definitely going to affect you guys. That's for sure. Can we see the 18Z GFS? My non-smart brain is not comprehending. Let's see if those 18Z ensembles have come in, and then we're going to end the stream. Let's see. Parameter. It's almost 9 o'clock, so I would imagine that the GFS should be in. There it is. All right, we have our 18Z ensembles now. Let's go through time. So there goes Philippe, not anticipated to strengthen up very much. Yeah, see, the GFS actually has more stuff coming out of the Caribbean all of a sudden. It's slowly but surely been increasing that. And look at that, the 18Z ensembles are still going pretty aggressive for the Gulf, although some of them they're slicing the Central Peninsula in half now. We have some going south, and then we have others going towards the Panhandle, and we're missing the gap over Central Florida. And then look at this. This is a little concerning. That's a little interesting. That came up. That's been trending a couple runs now. So we'll definitely have to watch. I've been looking at the oscillating patterns, both the Mad and Julian, and then just overall what our North Atlantic oscillation could look like. And it was very interesting for those of you who watched my video. It actually looks like for our upper level vorticity potential charts, the Euro wants to see a return of favorable conditions for development even into November. And you know what? I know I keep saying this, but I'll end the stream on that note so you guys can see what I'm talking about. We'll go down here, and where are we? Vorticity potential 200 millibars, long range. We'll go to the control, and where are we at? Is this, what model is this? This is 2023 10 second 0Z. This is not what I looked at earlier. Where is what I looked at earlier? That's not what I looked at. This looks, well, I mean, either way, this is more or less what I saw earlier. There's the mean. Here's the control member. Anyways, what I'm looking at here on this chart is look at how in the very... Oh, no, I see. This is exactly what I was looking at. I'm sorry. It's just it's moved through time now. We've extended the time out a little bit. So here is our favorable conditions for the Western Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and then out in the MDR, where that other system looks like it wants to try to form up. We have favorable conditions all the way through to the 21st of October. Then we see a bit of a calming trend for most of the Atlantic. Still some maybe anomalous activity closer to home. And then look at what happens as we go through November. This is going to be interesting to watch because it's highlighting that we could see things go downhill in terms of our thunderstorm activity even in November. So it's not over until it's over. It's not over until it's over. And I don't want people telling me it's over because it's August now. That doesn't make any sense. I'm watching the Eastern and Central and also West Caribbean. I just moved to Pensacola on an RV last year. If something comes, I'm moving back to Michigan. Gene, I don't blame you. Always think outside the box and question everything, especially with weather. Agree. Pin your email address. Email address. Let me go ahead and drop that in the chat real quick. And for those of you who inquired last time, I'll openly admit I did try to turn on super chats and donations, and unfortunately, because I'm not monetized yet, YouTube doesn't give me the option, so we have to wait several weeks until I get a decision on whether or not we can start doing that. But there's my email address if you guys want to send me anything. This doesn't feel like Ian. I'm sorry, but I hate when people say that because nothing feels like it, to be honest. I agree. Right now, we're not looking at anything crazy. Like, this is definitely not something intense, at least not right now. Obviously, we're still in the early stages, so it's nothing crazy, but, you know... Not in South Carolina, I meant my brain cells. I meant when it made landfall. Oh, Zenful, I love your weather passion. Thank you. I appreciate that. Fist bump to you, Zenful. There should be storm warning for French islands of Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Dominica. I believe there is one tropical storm warning out there specifically, but that's about it. Whoa, hi, Sharon Jackson. I worked hurricane cleanup after Opal. Interesting. Good night from Jamaica. Ricardo, good night. Good night, all. Ken, good night. I was here the day after Opal to help my parents. Interesting. It's October. Wow, active MJO in November means stormy weather, no tropical cyclones, El Nino rain, Thanksgiving may be wet. I agree with that. So are we safe or not safe in Tampa? I would say you're safe for now. We're not really ruling out anything specific. And I know that sounds gray after everything that we've talked about, but we're seeing that there's likely to have enhanced activity in the Gulf. There is something likely to take shape. It's not going to just be calm, cool, clear weather. But on the same token, we can't determine whether or not it's tropical, non-tropical, or just shortwave vorticity from our trough. So what date should we keep an eye on? Okay, so ballpark rough estimates, between the 8th through the 10th is when we could start seeing something take shape in the Gulf. Between the 12th through the 14th is when Florida or the rest of the Southeast could really start seeing effects. And between the 13th through to the 16th, we could see another batch of development possibly take shape. That's going to be the big thing. So those are my timelines. Those are my 3-date ranges or 3-date thresholds. Thank you, brother, for the info. I'm hyped for Hype Day Friday already. Hopefully by then we'll have some juicy info. Yeah, if we can hype up something on Friday, you can best believe we're going to have a Hype Night Friday. That's for sure. Good night. See you tomorrow, Boss Lady Mama. Have a great evening. Can't wait for the fall cold front to come this Thursday night into Friday morning. I agree. Tomorrow's my birthday. FaZe Jarvie, happy early birthday. Leave me a comment tomorrow on my video letting me know it is your birthday. Just as a friendly reminder, and I'll wish you a happy birthday undoubtedly. Enjoy the Rays game tomorrow, Tampa. We're going to a hockey game tomorrow, and I think it's the Tampa Bay Bolts playing at the Amway Arena, so we're going to be there tomorrow night. I got to get my video out before we head to that because we got to start headed up to the Amway, a bunch of us, at about 5:30. Forget about it. Thanks. You're very welcome. Superchar's good night. October 4th, you will get EAS alerts on your phone. Will there be another live stream tomorrow? Not tomorrow, Wednesday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time are our Tropics talk. Monday through Saturday, I usually always post a video around 6 o'clock. Sundays, depending on if something big's happening. We haven't had something like that happen yet, so, we'll see. Maybe this Sunday, if not the following Sunday, something might happen, to be determined. But thank you all for watching. It's 9:08. We're going to start wrapping up. I see we have 127 viewers in the chat right now. Thank you all tremendously for tuning in. Even if you haven't popped into the comment section, it means a lot, you tuning into my live streams. And we're slowly but surely building that population, building that subscriber base. It means a tremendous amount to me because I do this all for you guys. And I do it to just satisfy my own craving to talk weather with other people who are pretty like-minded. Good night, my friend Larry. Good night. Good luck, Rays. I'm rooting for the Blue Jays. Happy birthday. Yes, everyone having everyone wishing a happy birthday in the chat. We really appreciate it. But tomorrow you can anticipate another Weather Center segment around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back to talk tropics at 8 p.m. on Wednesday night, guys. If you have any additional questions regarding Philippe and or stuff in the Caribbean, the Gulf, or even out in the East Pac for that matter, or things going over the United States, please let me know in the comments to this video or my current video up on my main channel, or I should say the main episode, not this live stream. I'll definitely get back to you. I make it a point to answer every single question, comment, or concern on there, regardless of what's going on. I'll make sure to get back to you. But, yeah. Good night, everybody. Empress Athena, smile first cold fun of the season coming soon. Yep. Thank you for the information. You're very welcome. Good night from Tampa. Zenful, good night. Well, we're all safe for now. We're always all safe for now. Sounds like a Resident Evil tagline for those of you who played the old games. You're very welcome, Carmen. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you all once again. We'll see you tomorrow for our next full segment of Weather Center Nazario, and we'll see you Wednesday for our next Tropics Talk. You guys know what's coming next. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.